Today we're going to show you how to change the drum felt seal on your dryer. It's a really easy job. All you're going to need is a Phillips screwdriver, a 5/16 nut driver, and maybe a small flat blade. Let me show you how we do it. Now before we begin this repair, because we will be working near some electrical circuits, we will have to disconnect the power to the dryer. If your dryer has a cord on it, simply unplug it from the receptacle. If it's a hardwired dryer, you'll need to locate the fuse panel or breaker panel and disconnect the power there. Next, we will remove the door and the front panel. There are 4 Phillips head screws that secure the front panel, and 2 of them also hold the door hinges in place. Now the latch side will have a little plastic bumper that comes off with the screw. The hinge screws are countersunk. They're different from the screws on the latch side, so make sure we don't mix those up. We can now take the door and just lift up slightly on the door and disengage the arrowhead hinges from the slotted openings in the bulkhead. We'll set that aside, and we'll just disengage the tops of that front panel. There's a little slotted opening in the front panel that engages on this hook at the top. Tilt it down and lift it off of the 2 hooks on the bottom, and we can set that aside. Next, we're going to remove 6 screws that hold the front bulkhead to the dryer. We'll start with the 2 at the top that also secure this hook in place. And just lift out on that hook, tilt it to the outside, and it will drop down out of the main top. And there are 2 screws on the left-hand side at the bottom, and it's the actual bottom one that we need to remove. On the opposite side, again, we're going to remove 1 screw that secures that hook. We're going to lift out on it, tilt it to the outside, and drop it out of the main top. And we have 1 screw on the bottom on the right side. And there are 2 at the top, and it'll be the top one that we need to remove. And that will allow us to lift up just slightly on the top, and we can pull the whole bulkhead right out of the front of the dryer. Rotate that around enough that we can disconnect wires to the door switch and as well to the light bulb if your model has a light bulb on it. And we can set the bulkhead aside. Now if we're just replacing the front felt, this is as far into the disassembly as we need to go. If you're replacing the rear felt, we'll also need to remove the drum. And although the repair is the same for both the front and rear bulkhead, we've opted to show you the repair on the rear one based on the fact that we have to remove more items to get to it. And that will involve disengaging the belt from the idler. So you can reach in on both sides of the motor, locate the idler, push it to the left, and disengage the belt from it. Now we can remove the drum. Just lift up slightly on the top. You can pull the drum out and set that aside. As well as the belt. We now have access to the rear drum felt. So the next thing we could do is tilt the top up and support it against a wall. And then with a flat blade screwdriver, we're just going to fold that felt down, and you'll see a metal tab that secures it in place. So just gently lift up on those metal tabs, just enough so that the felt will pull out easily. And you're going to continue to do that all the way around the circumference of the bulkhead. Now before you remove the felt, you may just take note of where it ended and started. And then you can just peel that completely out and discard the old one. Now to install the new one, we'll slide it in so it bottoms out in that opening. Then we'll fold those tabs down to hold it secure. And we'll continue to do that all the way around the circumference. Now there should be an overlap at the end. And what we want to make sure that we have is that based on the fact the drum is going to turn clockwise from the front, we need to have that piece of felt that's on the left overlap the end on the right so that it doesn't catch on it. So we'll need to release that first tab just enough to tuck the second piece under and then pinch it back in place. Now when you put the drum in, the felt is going to fold back on itself all the way around to provide a nice cushion and airtight seal for the drum to ride on. Now while we have it out, you may want to just check the function of the rear drum rollers, make sure they turn freely and that they don't require replacement. And then we're ready to put the drum back in. I find it easier to drape the belt around the drum first and then slide it into the opening. You will have to lift up in the top enough to clear the width of the drum. And we'll set the back of it on the two rear drum rollers. Then we'll position the belt roughly about a couple inches in front of that deep rib. And then we'll reach in on both sides and wrap it around the idler and the motor pulley. Now at this point, you should take the drum and just rotate it clockwise. Make sure that the blower wheel is turning and that the belt lines itself up properly on the drum. Should have the rib side of the belt against the drum and the flat side up. And now we're ready to reinstall the bulkhead. So first we'll route the wires to the light bulb socket up through that channel. And connect those. And as well, we'll need to reconnect the wires to the door switch. Now to reinstall the front bulkhead, we'll tilt it in on the bottom and we're going to lift up slightly on the top. And then we'll also need to lift up slightly on the drum. Tuck the front glides under the front of the drum and then line up the screw holes with the openings in the cabinet. And we can start by putting a couple of those screws in at the beginning to hold it in place. Now that we have the bulkhead secured to the cabinet, I want to make sure that our top fits down and hangs out over the front of that bulkhead. Then we can install the hooks. Simply tilt them into the little slot at the top, rotate them around, and reinstall the 5/16 screw. Do the same for the opposite side. And now we're ready to reinstall the front panel. Fit the hooks on the bottom into the slotted openings. And engage the little hooks on the side with the slotted opening on the top of the front panel. At this point, you can put the latch side screws and bumpers in place. Remember to keep the flat side of the bumper against the front of the dryer. And don't over tighten the screws because they are plastic bumpers. We don't want to crack them. Drop the lint filter back into place. And before we put the door on, we'll want to run our hand around the front felt area on that bulkhead to make sure that we didn't fold the felt over. And if we did, just take a small flat blade screwdriver, tuck it in there, and peel it back into position. Next, we'll install the door. Again, we have little arrowhead hinges here that will fit into slots on either side. Once you have it pushed in fully, and you can drop it down so that the hole in the hinge lines up with the holes in the front panel. We'll reinstall those 2 screws, making sure that they don't go in cross-threaded. And these 2 we can snug up nice and tight. Now we'll check alignment of the door and the latch. We're ready to reconnect the power, and our repair is complete.